We are delighted to welcome His Excellency Paul Kagame, the President of Rwanda, who will be interviewed by our Editor-in-Chief, Jerry Baker. Please welcome.
Thank you, Thorold. Thank you, all of you for that introduction. President Kagame, thank you very much indeed for being with us today, being the President representing Africa, if I may say so today. Much of our conversation has been dominated by another president that everybody is on a lot of people's minds at the moment, and that's President Trump. And I thought I might start by asking you, if I may, about President Trump, about the new administration, and what that might mean for Africa in general, for Rwanda in particular. Now, we don't yet know much about, and President Trump hasn't really not spoken much about Africa. As we were just saying, he doesn't have had much of a connection with Africa. But we do know that he stands for a very assertive nationalism, economic nationalism. And you, of course, have been very much part of the last 20 years of leading, one of the leaders of the globalization, you could call it globalization movement. You've been very much involved in the World Economic Forum. You've conducted major reforms in Rwanda, which have opened up the Rwandan economy and created significant growth there. I'm wondering if President Trump makes good on all his promises to be an assertive nationalist, and you've got these movements around, populist movements around the world. What does it mean for Africa? What does it mean for economic integration and openness and the kind of globalization that serves so many countries so well?
Well, thank you. If President Trump is still being figured out by those who elected him, you can understand from our perspective that probably that is going to be to take time to understand what the new administration under President Trump holds for Africa. So maybe we will soon find out. But if I may give it a context, if you look at previous administrations and see what each administration had for Africa, there are a number of good things that happened. If you look at in the previous years where we had AGOA for trade with Africa, and where we had PEPFAR, this was to support health. There have been other activities in recent times. There was a summit under President Obama, which brought African leaders, political and business leaders together, United States, figuring out what can be done. But overall, when you look beyond that, you don't find a clear US-Africa policy in place for those years. So administration comes, you want to wait and see what they want to do with Africa. Not so much always for Africa. I think even for is welcome, but I think I would prefer and I would welcome with Africa, because I want to see that Africa gets its act together and can do business with the United States or with any other country or part of this globe. So I don't think we should make a concrete judgment on this about President Trump, about this administration, until really it has played out for us to understand exactly where we are. Maybe also, if I may add, some positive things might come out of this, actually. I think this kind of babysitting Africa also sometimes may help. Maybe it will push Africa to think about what we can do for ourselves together and increase the activities that can develop our economies and do more trade, invest in and with each other, and So that at the same time, with one voice, if we were able to deal with the United States or Europe or other big countries like China and other places. So I want to be looking at more positively what might come with the new administration rather than all of a sudden give it a negative image.
But whether or not Mr. Trump makes good on some of the things he's done, you see the political trends in much of the developed world, which do seem to be turning against globalization. We've just had this vote here in Britain, obviously last year, to leave the European Union. Donald Trump. You've got economic nationalism on the rise in other European countries. For Africa, for Rwanda, which does depend so much on global trade, on global economic cooperation, do you think that the kind of global economic cooperation we've seen in the last 20 years can survive these populist trends that we're seeing?
I think it can survive mainly because it's not going to survive on the basis that one entity is doing a favor another entity. I think all this, whether nationalism or populism, as people have called it, or whether it is globalism, I think it's also driven by, to a great extent, self-interest. And if people realize there is more to do with working together, that they actually fulfill their self-interest, then that might come back. Or that may force people to find out what was it that was wrong in the first place with the system we had working, globalization, and then people realize that maybe we need to be doing more than we had been doing before that, in the area of governance, in the area of cooperation, in the area of, so that where one gains, the other is also gaining, rather than in some instances, we have seen zero-sum games being the order of different, interactions. So for Africa, I think while we wait to see what unfolds and therefore adjust to that, we should also be learning lessons and saying maybe we shouldn't be entirely depending on this. We should also be doing certain things with each other. When we talk about regional integration, when we talk about, the whole continent, we are trying to understand that there are lots of resources, natural resources, in terms of human capital, there is plenty. How, for all these decades, how have we failed, to organize, to come together, to make full sense of this? And if you look at the intra-African trade and investments, they're still very low. So why did yet everybody's talking about what we do with other countries outside of the continent. That's fine, and that will continue in any case. It has been very beneficial. But why would you be stuck with this when there is a lot more we could do with each other? And therefore, maybe this is going to be a reminder that while the world is going through these uncertainties and difficulties thereof, I think lessons are going to be learned, and maybe people may go back to the old situation and be able to do better things than we have been doing, or we will wake up to the reality that there are things we should have been doing among ourselves that we weren't doing, that we should also be doing.
Let's talk particularly about Rwanda. Since the tragedies of the 1990s, Rwanda has been one of the more successful stories in Africa economically. You've had sustained growth in living standards. You've risen significantly up the rankings of World Bank indexes of good governance, social progress, healthcare, education. You've, by any measure, Rwanda has been a standout country over that time. What lessons are there, again, on this issue of liberalization, of economic integration, or what other lessons are there for other countries in Africa? The last couple of years have obviously been difficult for many countries in Africa because of what's happened with commodities, but what lessons do you think other countries can learn from the Rwandan experience?
Our experience has been that of centering every activity we have been involved in on our people. These Rwandans, to us, come first. How are they involved? How are they participating? How are they benefiting? It's key. Because we have learned from where we have been and where we are not trying even to compare ourselves with others. We are comparing ourselves with ourselves, where we have been and where we are. We find the major difference has been that if it is about economic growth, how has it come about? Have people benefited? Has it been inclusive? How? So we keep, testing and questioning ourselves about this. Even as we work with our neighbors and beyond, we keep coming back. How are Rwandans participating in this? How are they benefiting? What do they think? I think lessons could be learned in that way for those who find it makes sense, but certainly it has made sense for us. And we have also targeted those areas that actually cover as many people as possible. When we are talking about education, when it's about health, it's about information and communication technologies. It's about how do they serve people? How have they been educated to the point that they actually make good use of what is available to us? So many things have happened, but for us, it keeps coming back to this test we put ourselves to of saying, is it making impact? In fact, that's why in place we have ways of always measuring, whether it is quarterly or every year or after 3 years, we keep measuring what progress we are making, how far we've gone, looking at where we have been and how we have deployed the resources available to us, and accounting at every stage for what we are doing.
What about investment? I mean, because one of the criticisms of your government has been that despite this favorable economic performance, you've had, relatively speaking, relatively lower levels of inward investment, foreign direct investment, and there is a criticism, and it was, I think it was surfaced in a draft World Bank report in 2014, that perhaps there was a sense a lot of investors had that there wasn't a level playing field, and that there were some businesses, government-supported businesses that got favourable treatment. I mean, think about this Crystal Ventures, the RPF-backed corporation. Is that a fair criticism? I mean, does Rwanda need to be more open? Does it need to create a more level playing field for investors in the various sectors where there is a real opportunity for investment?
Maybe those behind such criticism may be thinking they are fair, but I think it's mainly based on ignorance. They lack information. Let me give you a few facts. One, if you look at 2009, in the area of FDI, about $140-something million came in. When it came to, by 2014, we had 560+ million US dollars coming in. Go to 2005, it came down maybe by about $60 million, but still towards 500 million. This was from outside, and the trend is continuing in that direction. So that's not because we have favored anyone. Number two, the story and the history of Crystal Ventures, this starts way before we actually came into government. It started during the liberation struggle. And when we came to power, this continued, but on the basis of transparency and accountability throughout, up to this day. In fact, it was also made public. Crystal Ventures, which was TriStar before that, it had different names, invested in areas that actually were not attracting investments, whether domestically or from outside.
Things like dairy farm, was it some dairy farm? Some of the big.
The first, no, I'm just talking about how the chronology of things.
Yeah.
For example, they are the ones who initiated bringing in telecom companies into Rwanda. And when this gained the interest of private sector, whether from within or from outside, the Crystal Ventures pulled out. So they were going into those areas that people thought were risky, and they were not just doing it like that. It was also because they were associated, indeed, with the party that is in power, and we wanted to see a difference made in our country, where nobody was coming to invest. If we could invest and stimulate the investments, more investments to come into Rwanda, and then these companies pulled out and tried something else, absolutely this was the way to go. And I will compare this when it comes into agriculture or agribusiness and so on. Still, we took so long up to maybe 2005, 2007. We were always asking private sector, whether within Rwanda or from the region, that we wanted to have agro-processing in the country. And these investments were not coming. So they went into it. That's how they developed a big factory that processes what the farmers produce. But others also came into the field, and there has been good competition. So the others have been thriving. The Crystal Ventures have also been realizing good returns on them. In fact, what is happening now, they have been wanting to sell to any other private entity that would take that over. Just like the telecom company I mentioned earlier, where when the private sector got interested, they would just withdraw and
so
do something.
Private sector companies, domestic or foreign, no, they're not facing any unfavorable treatment in terms of investment opportunities.
I'm just telling you, if I would challenge anybody to bring any fact. But let me tell you something. You see, for us in those small economies like ours, we face some difficulties. And we try to deal with that by creating a balance in saying, how do we actually continue to attract foreign direct investment, investors to come and invest. And we know also some of these people who come are actually backed by some of the export funds that have been created by those countries where they come from. So how do we balance this with also encouraging domestic investors to actually thrive and the economy to move in a balanced way? Right. This is what we have had to manage.
So you're trying to create a level playing field
absolutely.
Against companies who may be being subsidized, do you think, externally?
There is not a single case that anybody would point out to me that would not meet this test that we have put there and explanation that is very clear.
What about, let's talk about technology. We've had some very interesting sessions today on technology. Kigali, I know, has established a reputation as something of a technology hub, and I know this is something you've been eager to encourage. What's the Yeah, what are the prospects for innovation, for creating a hub like that, Kigali, for creating innovation opportunities? What's the environment like for investing in innovation in terms of the quality of the workforce, the availability of capital? How are you seeking to really grow innovative technology in Rwanda?
We've made very good progress, starting with the investments government has made in ICT infrastructure. But beyond that, continued to put in place an environment where private sector partnership with the government, private sector can also come in. I'll give you an example. We invested with Korea Telecom in a public-private partnership. And we now have 4G LTE that will cover the whole country, and 95% of our citizens will have possibility of going in that direction. And this was because of the partnerships, which reduces the cost of the investment capital for everyone. Now, but beyond that, we continued and invested. We have, first of all, this triangle where it's the human capital institutions. We have Kagame in place. We have African Institute of Mathematical Sciences in place. We have different institutions establishing with international renown for this. And then at the same time, because of encouraging this venture for between private and the government, we have also put in place institutions that will provide capital for people to invest in these ideas or innovations they have, from the higher education institutions to government and the private sector working together. We are seeing a lot of progress being made. In fact, in IT sector, when we see, for example, in education, in health, in different areas. Then government itself, we have government that is working, where government is providing online services. We have Rwanda Online. And what we are aiming to achieve is cashless, paperless, and 24/7 services where citizens with the government can really interact to the basis that these innovations in technology can serve the citizens of our country, but also companies can make the investments and also have good returns. And we are seeing this work already.
I want to open up to questions from the audience in a second, but just I want to talk about the political conditions in Rwanda. One key difference between you and President Trump is that you've been elected twice, 2 7-year terms with enormous majorities. The envy of President Trump, the vote share, I'm sure that you got, 93%, I think, last time. You've changed the constitution to enable you to run for a third term, and you were, by any measure, again, obviously, you've been very popular in Rwanda. But your opponents say that the climate for political opposition is not very open and accommodating, and that there's claims that critics have been silenced, that some of your opponents have been either forced out of the country or even worse. Is this, and there have been recent cases, the case of this woman, actually this British woman who's just been arrested, I believe, who disappeared for 3 weeks, and has now been arrested and charged with crimes. How do you answer the criticism that as popular as you are, you are you've been silencing critics, and you've been making it hard for political opposition to take root.
Well, I think even in the most advanced democracies, that's why today we are finding things that take you aback and you are surprised. It's because you have made it appear that your systems or situations are perfect, and you have actually wanted others to emulate that. But you keep coming back to being surprised by what your own system is producing and gives you. For me, I think some of these things that are unfolding, whether in Europe or America or wherever, haven't surprised me. I saw this coming. When you heard about this thing that came, it didn't originate from Rwanda. It came. Things about fake news, about all kinds of stuff. I think we've
Do you have any fake news in Rwanda, or is that?
We've. I think the whole world has has been feasting on us on this basis, and so I think I sit back and have a moment of saying, okay, what you have been hitting us with is coming back to hit you, and so.
Is it fake news, the criticism of you? Is that fake?
Because you see, there is not even an effort to follow things and say what happened, could it have happened, why did it happen? It's always, oh, somebody is arrested. Oh, it is President Kagame who has arrested him. Then, you know, this person must have been the one in the right. The government is always in the wrong. This is always something that happens year in, year out. But then how do you contrast this with the fact of what you have said? But that is if also you want to give, people may want to pay attention to people's views, feelings, choices, and actually that they should be the ones to decide what happens in their own countries. All that you said, whether it is the economy or the participation or the people saying, of course you say, oh, you changed the constitution, you did it. No, I'll tell you, I did not change the constitution. You say you changed the constitution because this whole thing is always personalized. It's me. It's this.
It was ratified in a referendum.
It's never the people. No, even the origin of it. Yes. If you know the truth, maybe if you want to know the truth, that is, you will find that it is the people who change the constitution. It's not me. In fact, we had 2 years. We were going through 2 years. People trying to convince me there are Rwandans here. They can tell you. Well, those you say in the opposition will always say something else. In fact, if I had not even accepted to run another term, they would still have had something else to say. So there would always be that. But my satisfaction lies in the fact that we haven't been involved in doing anything wrong against our people. No. This is what, doesn't matter who says what. Some of it you just ignore, but you do what you think you should be doing. What we're involved in our country is to develop our country. We are already left so far behind. And if we don't take care of ourselves, nobody will. Absolutely not. And so in taking care of ourselves as Rwandans, we will do what we feel we should be doing for ourselves. It doesn't matter what somebody wants to say about us. As long as these Rwandans are happy with what they are doing and want to do it, we will always do it. And then we will see the others will keep struggling also with their own situations. And for us, we will be listening to the lessons they want to give us. We have no problem with that. But we will not be distracted from what is good for our country.
Okay, we've got time for a couple of questions. I'd like to take a couple. Lady here right at the front, please. I think we have microphones coming to you.
Excellency, I was in Rwanda last year, and I was struck by the fact that as we were landing, it was my maiden trip to Rwanda. The first thing they said to us as the plane was touching ground was, get rid of all your plastic bags. You will not be allowed to carry that. And that struck me, because the whole sustainability issue was being played out. And when I did land in Rwanda, I was amazed at the cleanliness of the place. And my name is Chinelo Anohu. I'm the Director General of the Nigerian National Pension Commission. And it goes right to the heart of the sustainability we're planning and trying to send out to the continent. My question is this. You mentioned in your talk about regional integration, regional participation, regional promotion of investment. How do you think this can play out? Who will lead it? And how do we make sure it actually happens? Thank you.
Maybe take one
Please.
Yes.
Go. Do you want to take another question, or do you want to answer that one straight away?
Just one by one, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Please go ahead.
So, regional integration is good in and of itself. It is even made better by the member countries of that integration entity coming from a place where they have also done their best for themselves. So if you have each country doing well, as I know many African countries are trying and want to, and then people come together, then things will always play out. So who does it? It will be the countries responsible. Let me talk about East African community. The East African community is Kenya, Tanzania, Burundi, Rwanda, Uganda, South Sudan. Now, we have put in place arrangement of working together, whether it is integrating our infrastructure, or, there is a customs union, or people are talking about monetary union, and a possibility of even forging a political federation. Now, some of these things may take very long to happen, but there are those that can happen now, and others medium as wait for the long-term ones. So all these countries have to be wanting to benefit from regional integration. And regional integration is about what everybody contributes and what everybody takes away from that. But always in regional integration, you'll find everybody will be walking away with something bigger than what they could have on their own as individual countries. Especially in Africa, individual countries end up being very small. If we come together, whether southern, eastern, western, or northern country regions, I think we are better off that way. So the message is clear. All Africans want integration, and we are trying to see that it happens.
Another question, please, quickly. Yes, a gentleman there in the blue.
Thanks very much. We've seen how problems in the Democratic Republic of Congo before have sucked in neighbouring countries, including Rwanda. How worried are you by the political situation there with President Kabila defying his own constitution and refusing to go?
I'm only concerned about my own country, and what happens in Congo is going to be their business, really. But what concerns me with our neighbors, including Congo, I don't just think about Congo, I think about all neighbors and others in the region with whom we have interests together. But the good news, despite all that happening, we have good business taking place. In fact, among people where we have good levels of trade is with the DRC. For security, I think there used to be more problems relating to security several years back. Today, not much. We are happy with that. So the rest is more internal than really something that is going to destabilize the neighbors like ourselves. So we pay attention in as far as the level of security or other things that may destabilize our country would be concerned. But I'm saying today, as far as we are concerned, they are at the lowest level for maybe the last 20 years.
Maybe one final question. Yes, lady here in the front. Thank you. We got it's just coming. It's just 1 second.
Hi. I've heard a lot about the work that you do to encourage entrepreneurship, specifically within the younger demographic. I wondered what sort of skill sets you think young Rwandans should be developing, and more generally, what would make the region more successful for future generations?
Well, what we have been trying to do is we invest heavily. In fact, the biggest chunk of our national budget goes into education. Education, health, infrastructure, agriculture, and so on, in that kind of order. But we first educate generally, and then encourage young people to pursue certain skills that would play out well for them in the marketplace, whether it is region or beyond. And then we have also established institutions to actually help mentor, develop young entrepreneurs who, including, we have funds and institutions. For example, just one quick example, business development fund, which we have created, that any young person with an idea can go there and would be financed or guaranteed 75 to the level of 75% the loan that that person will be getting, say, from the bank to actualize his idea into a business. Things like that. But we educate generally, we let people do what they like to do, and then we create incentives and encourage them to pursue certain areas. For example, when these technical skills, when you're talking about technology, engineering, people pursuing such areas of science that may, in the future, enable them to fit in the regional or global market.
President Kagame has travelled a very long way to be with us. He's been very, very generous with his time. I think he's got a lot further to travel as well in the near future. Please join me in being generous with our applause and thanking the President for being with us. Thank you. Just stay seated for 1 second. Thank you.